Industries open call briefing, the webinar. Just before we get going, I just wanted to make people aware that today's session will be recorded, so that if there's any issues with the webinar, please feel free to contact us. But yeah, we will be recording this session. Beck, can I just confirm that you've commenced the recording?
Yes, Tom, it's started recording.
Yep, so just because we are now recording, I'll just repeat that. So this session is being recorded today for the purposes of putting this webinar up onto the AgriFutures web page and on our YouTube channel. So thank you all for joining us today. Today's really about telling you about the AgriFutures Emerging Industries Program Round 5 open call. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions and answers, and also just to understand where we are going in the emerging industries portfolio. We'll also talk about some of the key requirements and changes that we have undertaken in the open call process, some eligibility requirements, and what we must receive from you in order to be compliant and to be assessed for within the panel. I'm then going to just briefly pause before the clarity session just to get any initial questions, but then we'll get Beck to give an overview of the clarity system, and then we'll just talk about the key dates and then open it to further questions and answers. So moving on, Beck. So just a bit of a background of the emerging industries portfolio for the people particularly that are new. The program is really designed to identify and support the emergence of agricultural industries that can reach or exceed $10 million per annum gross value production threshold within the next 5 years. And so we're really focused on ensuring that we can identify those industries rapidly, but also counter that with great research, development and extension projects. This is the 5th open call that we've conducted since the program commenced, and we now have a range of investments across the animal, aquatic and plant space. With this particular round, we are looking to contract successful projects both across this current financial year, 2021, and also the 2021-22 financial year and beyond. Moving on, Beck. Yep, so the most important thing that we've identified in emerging industries is the need for a research, development and extension plan. And the reason we do that is we get quite a number of industries that submit multiple proposals, and with no clear indication of its priority amongst the broader industry. And so one of the things we're actually asking applicants to consider is whether or not your industry has a research, development and extension plan. If it doesn't, we ask that would be the first point of call when putting a submission into us, because we will support industries to develop an RD&E plan. Those RD&E plans obviously also give an opportunity for your industry sectors to actually engage and develop your own capacity within your own commodity sector. It covers all aspects of the industry and all the value-added opportunities. At least that's our expectation. So it'll cover everything from production, market demand and industry development opportunities and/or gaps that need to be addressed in your sector. We also expect that the RD&E plan is prioritised. Obviously, we want a comprehensive view of all the industry priorities from an RD&E point of view, but we also want them in order of what's most important to least important. But importantly, it's also got to be industry owned. So when you develop an RD&E plan, we don't want it just to be the opinion of a single individual. We want the confidence to see that your RD&E plan has the support of the industry and it's endorsed, because it will form the basis for future RD&E investment. Moving on, Beck. So I'm just going to pass on to our chairman, Brian Ruddle, who's the chairman of the Emerging Industries Advisory Panel, just to give an overview of some of the investment opportunities that we have. Thanks, Brian.
That's great. Thanks for that, Tom, and welcome everyone. So I suppose, look, the key thing to take into account is that we've got the program split into 3 stages or phases, if you like. So the first is for those industries that are less than 2 million in gross value of production. The second is for those that are between 2 and 10 million. And then for the third, it's sort of those that are over 10 million. So while we've got a mandate with emerging industries to build industries up to 10 million, we also support larger industries as long as they're not levy paying already. I might move on to the next slide because there's a lot of words on this one, but the next slide sort of makes it a little bit clearer and sort of highlights those 3 phases. The key thing to take into account is the size of the projects, the length of time, and also the co-contribution requirements. So with phase 1, we're dealing with smaller industries, and we've limited the size of the projects mainly because we're going to be dealing with a large number of projects. There isn't a requirement for, or is not a requirement for co-contribution. We're dealing with 1-year projects. The key thing with the first phase is, we do need the industry partnerships, and I'll talk more about this in a moment. But we also need the RD&E plan. So what we had in the last round was a number of these phase 1 industries putting in predominantly to set up RD&E plans. And just building again on what Tom was saying, the reason that we're doing this is that with these RD&E plans, they're documents that can be shown to state departments of agriculture, universities. They can actually be sort of used as the basis for industry engagement with other research providers. It also gives us, from the emerging industries perspective, some more guidance and framing for as the industry starts to grow with other future projects, that we're sort of making sure that those projects are aligned with what the industry actually needs. Phase 2, as I said before, is between 2 and 10 million. It's up to 400,000 per project for up to 2 years. We do require a cash co-contribution of 25% of the total project value. You don't have to max the project out. You don't need a $400,000 project. It can be smaller than that. It just really is depending on, I suppose, what the project is, but that then also means that you need a smaller co-contribution as well. Phase 3 for industries that are more than 10 million in gross value of production, again 500,000 per project, up to 2 years, and then again cash co-contributions. Again, just reiterating that with phase 2 and 3, we still need RD&E plans. We need them to be either built in as part of the projects themselves or already in place in sort of the projects that are being put forward to align back to those RD&E plans. Just go on to the next slide. Thanks, Beck. Again, this is a really busy slide, but I'll just step you through the key elements. So the first one, I suppose, is sort of looking at the projects themselves and the investment opportunities. As I said, we'll fund RD&E plans or strategic industry plans, and that's what we've had through some of the previous open calls, because it is a requirement now that we need those plans in place. We'll fund production-focused R&D priorities. On-farm key projects that, if they're successful, will help unblock the production side of industries. We'll fund market demand, so that's that point 3 there. So market demand focused R&D priorities. So that could be around supply chain, it could be around manufacturing, all sorts of bits and pieces. So again, we'll look at those sorts of projects that unlock the demand for emerging industries. The fourth point there is around industry development. So this can be around governance aspects, networking events, forming industry associations, and doing those sorts of things. And so it's projects that help build an industry and sort of growing that sort of governance side of things. Point 5 is about subject matter expert travel support, which is, again, is a little bit difficult right at the moment with COVID. And then, yeah, point 6 is that governance strengthening. So reiterating industry development forums and the like. It's sort of, you know, what's going to help that particular industry. So yeah, so the second row there sort of just highlights that again around supporting in production, market demand, and industry growth projects. All of this is available on the website for you to have a look at in more detail. And I suppose the key thing to have a look at in terms of some of the criteria in this third row of this particular slide, what we need in terms of information is for category 1, you know, if it's sort of supporting production, we need full support from the industry association that represents at least 50% of the industry, including how the industry association will own and disseminate project outcomes. If there isn't an industry association, well, then we need at least 30% of producers, or 10, whichever is the lower number. So if you've only got 3 producers, 30%, well, if you've got 1 producer, you know, that's just sort of showing you the scalability of this. But we need the confidence. So when, from an assessment perspective, we're looking at it, we need confidence that there's a number of producers that see this project as being really important. Category 2, so supporting market demand. Again, we need full support from an industry association if there is one. If there isn't an industry association, well, then we need at least a couple of producers and also a processor supporting the application. Again, we need this focus, if you like, or confidence that there's actually, you know, demand from an industry perspective. And then industry growth, again, we need industry associations, or we need a critical mass of players, if you like, producers that are actually interested in driving this thing forward. So I suppose sort of the reason we're doing this is not to exclude industries. What we're trying to do is to make sure that we're really focused on growing industries. And that's, I suppose, the key focus with this whole program. And I'll touch on this a little bit more in a moment, but it's not about individual companies putting forward applications. We're wanting projects that are being put forward by industries or groups of individual producers or working with processors to put forward these projects to help unblock particular challenges around an industry. Next slide, thanks, Beck. So again, key requirements: essential that you've got an RD&E plan, or if you don't have one, build it into your proposal. We really do have this focused on budget, co-contributions, industry and producer support, and funding durations. They're all spelled out in the application documentation. Please stick to those things. We have a number of applications that come through and they try to push the boundaries of dollars or co-contributions or timeframes and things like that. As a panel, we're pushing back harder and harder on those because we do have criteria for a reason. There's a very strong emphasis on industry partnerships, and that's what we like to see, is where groups are coming together to help grow an industry. And also looking at that from a national focus as well. And then again, that last point, it's an industry-led application. We need to see how the application is going to benefit the whole industry. Next slide, thanks, Beck. So here are some things that I suppose sort of looking at what isn't eligible, and sort of looking a little bit of sort of red flags, if you like, around some of these things. So if the application isn't supported by an RD&E plan, you really need to make sure that it's in there. If you don't have an RD&E plan, it gives us grounds to sort of say that, well, yeah, this isn't going to go ahead. If you exceed the guidelines or the project time limits in Table 1, again, your eligibility is called into question and we can reject it. If you don't meet the minimum co-contribution requirements, again, it's not meeting eligibility and we can reject that. If you don't have a commercial focus, so in the past, we've had a number of research organisations put in applications, which is fine, no problem at all. But it's come across as research proposals rather than something that the industry wants. So if you are from a university or another research organisation like CSIRO, we really encourage you to engage with industry. Definitely, still submit and support them and everything like that. But we're looking for commercially focused projects. Next point there is about methodology. When we have these discussions, if you like, around the assessment, we're really delving into the methodology, how the outcomes are going to be achieved. And it's really important that you're very clear and detailed on that. The other one there, and it's sort of, you'd be questioned about your eligibility if you can't demonstrate progress from earlier research as well. Like in the past, we've had a number of applications come in, and our panel has got a lot of experience. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But often on our panel, people will say, but yeah, research has been done by this other group in this same area. And if your application's not picking up on that or recognising prior work, all of a sudden we're calling into question how really embedded you are within the industry, how much you really know what's going on within the industry if you don't know about that previous research. So again, it's really important that you're giving us, the assessment panel, some confidence that you're fully across what's going on in the industry and that what you're being put forward builds on prior research and fills specific gaps and isn't repeating previous work. The third last dot point there, we get really concerned when the, oh, sorry, go for it. Yep, go.
Can I just add one to that too? Like, if it is truly a new area of research, be explicit about it, because often if you don't say anything, we assume that you haven't done the assessment of existing research. So it's quite important that if you're cutting ground in a completely new area, which I must honestly say is generally not very often, yeah, be explicit about that. Anyway, back to you, Brian.
No, thanks for that, Tom. Yeah, so the third last top point there, industry benefit. I've mentioned this earlier. We really need to see the industry benefit. Again, in the past, we've had a number of applicants that come through that benefit their business and what they're doing, and we can't see how it's going to benefit the industry. There's a lot of other grant programs out there that help build individual businesses. This particular program is focused on building industries. So again, we need really clear articulation of the project outcomes and how the benefits of the project is going to be delivered to an emerging industry. Just throwing one thing up there, a lot of people talk about putting things up on websites as a dissemination strategy. We tend to be very skeptical of that. So you need to give some thought as to how the benefits of the research are actually going to benefit the organisations that are actually in the industry and how that dissemination is going to occur. And making sure that you include project team members that will be actively involved in the project. Again, in the past, we've had a lot of, or not a lot, we've had some proposals put forward that we know the people involved and we know that they're actually not available to implement the project, but they look really good on an application. It could be a professor or someone else that's being put forward, but then others are actually doing the work. Just make sure you're putting people on that are actually going to be implementing the project. Just coming back to who's on the assessment panel, and I'll just touch on this before talking about the clarity piece, but there's we've got a really diverse panel in terms of I suppose our background and experience, and you need to take this into account when you're bringing your proposals together. A number of us have formed startups in the ag tech space, raised significant capital into those startups. We've got industry people that have been involved with a number of emerging industries and have seen the whole growth and how industries move forward. We've got experiences across a whole range of different areas of government, innovation and research management. A number of us have worked with or within commercialisation offices within universities and CSIRO. We've worked with researchers themselves running research teams. We know what goes on behind the scenes is sort of what I'm trying to tell you. So what we're expecting sort of well thought out proposals that sort of, don't be afraid to talk about risks, for example, and how you're going to manage risks. We much prefer that rather than glossing over these risks and just sort of thinking that you can get them through us, because in our discussions when we do these assessments, we talk about risks a lot. We talk about the practicalities of the approach. We talk about, well, is this building on previous research? Are the key players really involved? And they're the things that we're looking for in these proposals, because it gives us confidence that when we invest in these proposals, it's really going to help the industry, grow, get more producers or increase production overall, and basically become more profitable. And that's why this program was set up and why we're rolling it out the way that we are. So within Clarity, and I know we're going to sort of do a bit of an overview of Clarity in a moment, but you need to make sure that the completed applications are there and that they're approved by your organisation's administrative contacts, particularly if you're coming out of research organisations. We need the industry letters of support. This is really critical. We see a lot of proposals coming through that don't have either the industry association's letter of support or a good body of producers or processors supporting the application. We rely on those letters of support. The second thing though, please don't cookie cutter them. Don't prepare a draft and send that around to everyone and get them to put it on their letterhead. We see it, and as soon as we see something like that, we discount your proposal, because what it tells us is that you, the applicant, is driving it, the industry is not, and the industry players aren't. So sure, I'm involved in writing a lot of proposals for my own business. I get the process, I get how hard it is, but just be careful about giving us cookie cutters letters of support. You need to demonstrate again that evidence the proposal builds on existing research, and again, make sure your budgets are detailed and cover those things off. Next slide, thanks, Beck.
This is actually a good point. This is actually a good point. Just before we move on to Clarity, one thing I will stress is we have had problems in the past with people leaving it to the last minute to register on Clarity and also put their attachments in. So it's quite important to pay, if you're quite new to this process in particular, to listen in on the next session, which Beck will be outlining in regards to the Clarity and the administrative side. One of the things I just wanted to flag between now and the end, we'll go to a full Q&A at the end of the Clarity discussion, but if you've got any specific questions, if you'd like to put them into the chat here on the chat forum and make them out to either, well, you can make them out to everyone if you wish, but at the least make them out to either Brian or myself, and we'll endeavour to answer them in the main session at the end. But what we might do is pass over now to Beck just to give an overview on Clarity, and yeah, we'll have a broad Q&A session at the end of this Clarity session.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Beck.
Thank you. So guys, I'm just going to run over some of the basic steps in regards to Clarity and just go over how we gain access to the system, particularly if you're new and haven't yet used Clarity before, the process to follow, and how to get help if you have any issues when you're submitting your application. So Clarity itself is an out-of-the-box version, but we've actually customised it for AgriFutures. So it's being customised so we get the best out of it for all of our open calls. So why do we need a tool like Clarity? So the reason we use Clarity is obviously for our project management system. It's not an intuitive system, but we are in the process at the moment to replace it. So in the meantime, there's some resources that can help you out in the system when you use your applications. So there's plenty of user guides that include screenshots and step-by-step you through the process. So the reason we use Clarity is, as a statutory authority, we need to be transparent in our decisions and need to be able to show the process that was followed during the contracting. So from the open call right through to the contracting phase. So Clarity allows us to document all of our decisions that were made throughout procuring of the projects, and it forms a large part of our record keeping at AgriFutures. So it's important that all of the information entered is accurate in the system. So how do you get access to Clarity? So if you've never used Clarity before, on the website, there will be a few hyperlinks in regards to setting up a new user request. So if you've never used it before and you don't think your company has ever used it before, please use the new user and company creation request form. If your company is not set up in Clarity and you just use the new user form, we'll have to send it back to you, as we need your company set up in the system to add you as well. So if you believe your company is set up in Clarity, just use the Clarity new user form. And if you're unsure, just use the new user and company creation. So what will happen is when you complete this form, we'll actually send an email through to our help desk team. We'll register you in the Clarity system and you'll be sent through an email. And in that email will include your login information. And it will also include a hyperlink to the user guides for Clarity. So it will include a hyperlink for how you submit your preliminary research proposal with the step-by-step instructions. Now, for access, we actually use a cloud-based application, but all the data is stored securely on our own server. So when you request to join Clarity, you'll be assigned to a group, which is basically a type of user, and that controls the level of access you have within the system. So when you submit for the open call, you'll only be eligible to see certain things as a principal investigator for that particular project that you're submitting. So everyone accesses it the same way, it's just access levels that vary. If you need any help throughout your submissions or you have any IT questions in regards to Clarity during your application process, please feel free just to email the help desk and they will either respond directly or they'll send it through to myself to assist you with progressing your application. But I'll circulate the links for how to access Clarity and the help desk email afterwards. So for the Clarity system, so how the workflow progresses is to start off with, you lodge your Clarity request form. So to get access to the system, you navigate to your application area to start your application. You submit your application for approval by the admin contact. Now, Tom did touch on this earlier, but your admin needs to approve it prior to the closing date. So you need to make sure you submit it and it allows your admin contact enough time to approve your application prior to the closing timeframe. So once your admin contact approves it, it will then send it through to us as a completed application. Your application is then converted to a project and is issued through to the Emerging Industries Advisory Panel for assessment. Let's go to the next. So a few common questions that we get from people who have submitted applications in the past. If you have an account but haven't used it in a while, it will usually be deactivated. So all you need to do is email help desk and they'll reactivate your account. Sometimes you can't enter text into the text boxes, so the free text fields within Clarity. If this happens, try switching your browsers. So sometimes Clarity may have an issue with the text box in Internet Explorer, for example, if you save your application and then go into a different browser like Chrome or Firefox, the fields should work. So if you have any issues with text not generating, try switching your internet browsers, and that will usually fix the problem. You can enter an application on behalf of the principal investigator, but they will need to be set up with an account as well, as they'll need to be listed on the application for obvious reasons, as they will be the project lead. And if you try and create a PDF of your application and it's blank, it means that there's a field within the application that hasn't actually been completed. So one of the boxes has been missed, essentially. And any contacts, so for clarity, email help desk. So any IT technical issues, email help desk. Any application or project queries, you email the program's inbox. So Tom, I'll hand back over to you to go over the next slide.
Thanks, Beck, and thanks everyone. So the really big thing now is the key dates for the open call. So it opened a week ago. Now the actual applications closed on the 18th of December. And it's really important because of our clarity system that you actually submit it on time, because once the time passes, it actually locks. So I just reiterate, if you need to get yourself set up, I wouldn't leave it till the last minute. Certainly talk to Beck about how you might do that if you're having any issues. As she mentioned, though, there is a lot of documentation available on our website. So yeah, it'll close at 3 p.m. on the 18th of December. We are looking to have a assessment by the panel in early February, and then we'd be advised of your outcome mid to late February next year. Normally we have a shorter period, but obviously due to the Christmas holiday period, we have slightly extended it, given that people are taking holidays and so forth. All right, next slide, Beck. So now this is really where it opens up to any questions and answers that the audience may have. Can I just ask though, if you are speaking, can I ask everyone else to mute so that we can clearly hear the question? And if you feel that you want to put it through the chat, by all means do so. I'm just checking the chat from my end, and there's been nothing received from myself. Brian, is there anything from your end?
Yeah, so I've had one question. I won't talk about the industry, but it was just a question about eligibility. And I think the key thing is that if you're in an industry that isn't currently levy paying and can then potentially become could become a levy paying industry under the Research and Development Corporation sort of program, that fits in with emerging industries. So just to give you a feel, you know, we've done work with sort of lavender, for example, is in previous rounds and things like that. A larger industry, but they're not currently levy paying. It's a fit. Seaweed is another one that we've done a fair bit with. Currently not levy paying. You know, potentially it could end up with fisheries research and development, but at the moment it's not, and so it's an industry that we're supporting. Industrial hemp is another one that we've done a fair bit of work with, that again is a production-based industry. We've been looking at all sorts of things around harvesting and use of residuals and things like that, and residual matter. And so again, it fits in with that emerging industries mandate, if you like. If you're not sure, again, I suppose it's a case of reaching out to Tom and Beck and just doing a double check if you're not 100% sure before you put the time and effort into putting a proposal together. But hopefully that's given you a bit of a feel as to the framing that we've got around what's in and what's not in from an emerging industries perspective.
Yeah. So I've just received one here, Brian, a question about whether or not there's a pro forma template for RD&E plan development. The short answer is yes. We are just finalising an internal document, which we are looking to put out more widely. I would say though, if you are looking for RD&E plans, by all means, have a look at our levied industries pages, where some of our industries actually have developed their own RD&E plans. What we might do, Beck, though, is we will look at putting a template up onto the Open Call webpage to assist people that may be thinking about the components of an RD&E plan. All right, any more questions from anybody?
No, we're getting off really lightly here. Yeah. Yeah, if you do have other questions as you're going through it all, yeah, feel free to send emails through and things like that. I suppose, yeah, again, happy to take any other questions, but just following on from some of the sections that I was talking to through the presentation, the things that we're really looking for are well thought out projects that help grow an industry. And so take the time, pick up on Tom's point. It's not a case of just throwing in an application and hoping for the best, because generally, unless you're very, very good at doing first cuts and spelling out all the details, it's pretty unlikely it's going to get up. You need to think about the industry. You need to make sure you're getting key players on board. And we're looking for well thought out projects. I've got one question that's just popped in. Will associated industries, this is about soil amendments and waste technologies and things like that, whether they'd be considered. What we've done in the past, really they need to be linked back to a potential levy paying industry. If it could be demonstrated that they could turn into a levy paying industry, I'd say that that's something that we could have a look at, and Tom might have some other thoughts on this as well. But ultimately, this is about emerging industries under the RDC program, if you like, the Research and Development Corporation program. But Tom, you got some other thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think just for those people that work in those sectors, it'd be worth just doing a bit of a snapshot, looking at what are some of the emerging industries where your technology might play a role. And trust me, there's plenty of them. If I look at one of our former emerging industries, which is now levied industry, you've got people like the tea tree industry, where they produce large volumes of waste, and more often than not, at the moment, they're presently burning because they've got nothing to do with the waste product. However, there's a whole marketplace for things like bioenergy and other uses of waste. So that my suggestion to companies that are working in that space is to take a close look at some of those industries that produce high amounts of waste. We've got a thing called the Australian Biomass for Bioenergy initiative, which is available online as well, and it gives a bit of an understanding of some of the feedstocks by sector. So yeah, in echoing what Brian said, we won't necessarily just fund a concept like soil amendments or waste technology. What we need is the application of that and the industry support to suggest that that's actually going to be important to them. So using the example I used before, certainly management of waste is a big issue for a number of essential oil industries. So, as an example, so yeah, certainly my suggestion would be to approach them and then look at how you might put a proposal in to address that.
We've had a couple of other questions, so I'll just run through them with you. So one of the questions was just in regards to whether the slides will be available. So we have actually recorded this session, and once it's published on our website, we will send the link out to everyone who is registered for the webinar. As we know, some people couldn't actually make the session, so we will distribute the recorded session through to everyone who has registered, so you'll be able to rewatch that or provide it to other people who are within your organisation who may want to also assist on your submissions. One of the other questions, Tom, which I'll pass over to you, was how often are the funding rounds run each year?
So typically we would run an open call twice per annum. Now that's not to say that that's a fixed formula. We may occasionally ask for more. The other thing that we're starting to do in emerging industries is we'll be putting a lot more requests for quotes out in the future. So it's really important that you encourage your colleagues that may have an interest in the portfolio to register on our newsletter. And what I might do is I'll get Beck to send an email out to all the people that registered, just with the details of how you do register to the newsletter. So yeah, certainly from that point of view, yeah, anything that we can do in that space to help in your application, by all means, get in contact with us.
Thanks, Tom. And I've just got another one in here as well. If you could just explain what you mean by a levy-paying industry for those who may not be familiar.
Okay, no problem. So, as you know, we are one of 14 research and development corporations. Our mandate is to conduct research, development and extension for the betterment of different agricultural sectors. Now, some industries actually pay a levy, which is in essence some revenue that's generated through the sale of a product. So for example, if I take the grains industry, a wheat grower would sell a ton of his crop at a certain value, and then a percentage of that would then be taken off, a bit like it's not a tax as such, it's actually a levy, but it's taken off, and then that money is pooled and distributed to the Research and Development Corporation to reinvest in R&D on behalf of that industry. The difference with us in emerging industries is our entire funding base is from government appropriation. So we don't get a levy to support a lavender industry or a coffee industry or a sea urchin industry. We actually we're completely government funded, and we use that money to actually help industries that don't presently pay a levy to actually get an R&D program up and running. And so we obviously, as you can imagine, there's a large volume of commodities that don't have a levy. So it's quite important to us that you can clearly demonstrate your growth ambitions, so that we can have the confidence that you'll reach the 10 million gross value production that we outlined earlier. Looks like another question's come. Hopefully that answers the question. If it doesn't, please, by all means, you feel free to ask a further question. Received a question here. I assume that the 2 million and 10 million thresholds on phases are industry thresholds and not individual company thresholds. That is correct. So this is at an industry level. We actually do have a project at the moment trying to measure gross value of production more accurately across a number of our sectors, given that they range in size and scope, and some industries don't have a formalised collection method for understanding gross value of production. But yes, certainly those thresholds that we've used are at an industry level. All right. Have we got any other questions that have come in, Beck?
That's all I've got in my queue at the moment.
So I guess, well, unless there's any other questions, all I'd say from my perspective as the manager, I work closely with Brian and the panel. So obviously we'll do everything we can to help support you to put your submission in prior to the closing date. But that being said, really pay close attention to those requirements that Brian outlined, because we have had instances in the past where we've had a submission and they haven't put an RD&E plan or acknowledged one, and unfortunately we've had to reject them. They were great proposals, but we definitely need to have an RD&E plan in place to start with, so that we can have the confidence that the industry is supportive of the research proposal that's coming in, but also to give you some autonomy when it comes to understanding the issue well with your sector. We've found good examples in the past where it's actually forced the applicants to actually go out and communicate with the whole value chain, and as a result we've received really good, well thought out proposals. So the RD&E plan isn't just a compliance tick off for, to mark a box. It actually adds a lot of value, not only to our panel, but also to the industry that's putting the application in. Any last questions? All right, well, nothing's come through, so we'll assume that everyone's okay. And yeah, certainly we want to say thank you to all for committing your time this morning. It's a big commitment to take an hour of your day. We are excited about the open call, and if you've got any questions, by any means, please feel free to ask between now and the closing date. And yes, we'll shortly make this recording available on the AgriFutures webpage. But thank you all for your time, and you have a great day.
Thank you.